Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor at ET Now, joins in on the show. Swami, hi, morning. How surprised were you to see the government stake so much over FDI in retail, and how should markets now read this?
Yes, I think if you want to sum it up, you can use Janis Joplin's famous phrase, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. You had a particular government which for 3.5 years of its first term was so paralyzed, so worried, do I really have a majority? So they were focusing on survival. After 3.5 years, now they find high inflation, allegations of corruption every single day. The congressman saying, we may not even win 100 seats in the next general election. So when you are in this particular position, what do you have left to lose? Instead of saying, let me not take any risks, you say, now let me go out and take all the risks possible to be seen as a government that is performing, instead of a government that is just so timid, so paralyzed, that it can do nothing except accept money under the table. That was the only kind of reputation for action that you were getting. So this is the big change. And with this big change, I think you finally found that reformers like Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram, who were not really being listened to earlier, suddenly they got the ear of Sonia Gandhi, and she was willing to come and share a public platform with Manmohan Singh on a thing like FDI. It was not just that. Over and above that, you had a situation where India was in danger of being downgraded by the credit rating agencies. So I think again Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram would have gone to Sonia and says, we cannot afford this. We need to act. We need to do things that will bring dollars in, that lift animal spirits, that lift the stock markets, that lift the whole country out of this terrible mood. And if it means taking risks, maybe we will lose in the Lok Sabha, maybe we'll lose in the Rajya Sabha, but let's go ahead. There's nothing left to lose. So we now have a risk-taking government, and that risk-taking government has tasted very good success on the FDI front. Having done that, I think it will now take additional risks. And this is very useful. I mean, instead of everybody talking just about Congress corruption, if you move the focus of public debate into things like FDI, that is much better for the image of Congress.
Swami, it's interesting, but every 10 years, the country faces some kind of a macro crisis, and every time the country faces some economic crisis, the government has taken some bold decisions. So are you saying that we are now getting strong signals of a risk-taking government, and we've been pushed to a corner just like 1991, some firm actions will be taken and we will emerge out with flying colors?
It's part of the story, of course. Now, we don't have any kind of national crisis of the kind that we had in 1991. It's a much milder kind of crisis. But in effect, shall we say, there are two kinds of crises. One was a crisis of Congress's own legitimacy. After all the corruption scandals and the poor election outlook, there was a political crisis internally for the Congress, along with this mini crisis of potentially getting downgraded by the rating agencies. Not comparable with 1991, so the action that you're seeing now is also not comparable. But definitely the feeling that in these desperate situations, to say, let me not take risks, let me not rock the boat, that kind of status quo, which sometimes looks a wise path in more normal times, when there is a crisis, if you act business as usual, that is political suicide. You know you're going to get killed. So when you have this kind of crisis, the thing is, okay, we cannot continue with business as usual. We have to take risks. Let's go out there. And if we take a chance, maybe we come out smelling of roses. So there's this new risk-taking approach. And yes, it is connected with these crises.
Swami, there has been a lot, or rather, there has also been a complete breakdown in relations between the government and the opposition. Given this backdrop, you think it's critical for the government to be combative, to push through reforms?
No, I said, it is not as though there were excellent lines of communications with the opposition and lots of things were being done on a bipartisan basis earlier. No. Some very, very minor bills, BJP and Congress could get together and some of those minor things went through. Nothing major was going through at all. So it is not as though the communications was a constructive one. Once, however, you decided to take the risk, you say, I no longer need the BJP to come on board. I am going to, instead of saying, I am going to worry about my lack of a majority in the Rajya Sabha, you say, instead of my worrying about my lack of a majority, let them worry about their lack of coordination and about their internal contradictions within the opposition. So this is what the Congress is taking advantage of. They are saying, even if I don't have a majority, I can exploit the contradictions among opposition parties to nevertheless win, although I don't have a majority. That's exactly what's happened on the FDI issue. I expect this is once again going to happen in some of the new bills. There is proposed bills on the anvil right now of increasing the amount of foreign equity in insurance companies, in various other things. In civil aviation, you need to have a higher ratio of voting power for the banks. That's another piece of legislation in the works. So, on all these issues, will the government go ahead and take risks exploiting divisions in the opposition? Yes, I think they will.
So Swami, what can we expect now? Let's talk about the insurance bill. There is a talk of government doing a clamp down on FDI and insurance, allowing 26% FDI and 23% FI investment instead of 49% in FDI. Do you see the BJP supporting this?
I think it's going to be the other way. Rather than try and seek accommodation with the opposition, they are going to say, if I have struck a deal with Mayawati, and if Mulayam can be persuaded to, more or less remain neutral or walk out, I already have a majority. So I suspect they are going to go on that particular path, not of wooing the BJP, but of taking on the BJP and trying to push it through regardless, using these two parties, Mulayam and Mayawati.
Right. Swami, the land bill is another contentious one. No one seems to be happy with the draft. Do you see some headway on this front?
It could happen. It could happen. I am not sure that that is the top priority right now. But yes, it could happen. I am not quite sure what the final contours are going to be. The way it was originally proposed, they were going to have, I think, almost 4 times the last land sale prices. Industry was concerned that this is going to push land prices through the roof and become one factor that makes industry uncompetitive. So I'm not even sure what the final contours of that particular bill are going to be. It could go through in this session, but they may also hold it in abeyance. They may prefer these other ones.
So Swami, apart from the obvious bills which we've already discussed, what are the other reforms you expect to see the government pushing over the next 6 months?
Well, the word reform has many meanings. The Aadhaar reform, the giving out of various benefits in the form of cash directly to bank accounts of beneficiaries, that is by far the biggest single reform in the anvil. And it would be a big thing, except that it would take quite a long time to implement. There is a talk of rolling it out by January 1st, but Monte Carlo Valia has already warned that the actual rolling out and getting it through may take another 2-3 months. There is talk of extending this thing to the whole country by 2014. From an electoral point of view, I think there's pressure to push it. On the other hand, if you push it out and it doesn't work very well, it may be counterproductive. But certainly the big reform that we are talking about right now is this. The second reform is Food Security Act, another biggie. It's been in the works for so long, and it's in some sense an additional subsidy over and above an existing subsidy. So perhaps less dramatic, less of a path breaker. But these are the two big things that the Congress is going to come out with. And these are the two things, I think, on which it's going to hope to do well in the next election. Even if it doesn't actually win the next election, which looks a pretty hopeless case. If it can become big enough to be a kingmaker, that would still be much better than the position it seemed to be in a couple of months ago when people said it won't even get 100 seats.
So we always delight to have you on ET Now, and thank you for your robust and solid insights, and we'll certainly see more of you going forward.